guys, welcome back in. Here today to talk to you a little bit about collecting. This is a collected tree. It's a nice big Thuja that we'll talk about in a little while. Made 2 trips up north this year. If you're looking at Michigan on a map, lower peninsula, stay with me, up here at the top. So I call that up north, but in reality it's only halfway up Michigan if you count the upper peninsula. But 2 trips to the same property, and we're going to show you 2 different videos today, so it's kind of a mini series about those journeys and what we found up there. I'm fortunate enough to have a close friend whose family owns a good 10 acres that's adjacent to an inland lake up in northern Michigan, and adjacent to that lake is a nice big bog. So we're going to be talking today about Thuja and Larch, because those are 2 trees that feature heavily in those areas. So, at any rate, quick overview of collecting. Why do we do it? What is it? Collecting, or Yamadori hunting, is basically going out in the wild and finding mature, interesting, beautiful material, and on a quicker timeline being able to develop a bonsai, right? When we all started out, we probably put a stick in a pot. We wouldn't want to admit it, but whether it's buying a $10 juniper from a garden center that's already in a bonsai pot but only has a 1/4 inch thick trunk and is dead straight, or putting a young sapling in a bonsai pot, we all soon quickly realized that that's not a mature illustration of what bonsai should be, right? A bonsai should convey age, should convey struggle, should tell a story, and basically should provide the illusion to the viewer that you're staring at a 3-foot high tree, yes, but it looks ancient, it looks huge, and it conveys that sense of age. So when we figure that out, we say, all right, I've got all these young trees, how do I get my hands on a mature bonsai? And quickly you realize that you're going to spend about $1,000 to get one of those trees that's truly show ready, and sometimes a lot more than that. So cost prohibitive right off the bat. We say, all right, well, if I can't buy it, how can I develop one myself? You have ground growing, right? I have 30 to 40 trees in growing beds that are basically, we're not growing trees, we're growing trunks, right? We're trying to create movement, trying to let it thicken up, so that we can eventually pull those trees out of the ground, put them in some kind of a container, and start working them, creating a branch structure, creating ramification, so that eventually, in probably 10 to 15 years from a sapling, if we're lucky, we've got a finalized bonsai, all right? The shortcut to that is collecting, or Yamadori hunting. Yamadori means collecting from the mountain, and it really is intended to describe a tree that we take out of the wild, dig up, and it's boom, almost ready to go into a bonsai pot. Those are rare, but we can find interesting material that maybe is 5 years off instead of 15, like we talked about with the ground growing option. So hopefully everyone understands why we collect, and also it's a hell of a lot of fun to go up there, right? This is a 3-hour drive for me that I made twice, and it's just a beautiful property and a beautiful place to be, and to be out there on your own trying to discover something that nature has shaped for you already is just very invigorating. So take a look, hope you like it. Let's send you up to northern Michigan right now. We're here in northern Michigan, and there are larch everywhere. The buds right now are kind of a golden brown, which means they're just getting ready to pop. Big Thuja. This property leads and is right adjacent to an inland lake, so this is a perfect area for larch to grow. You see a lot of hemlock, see a lot of Thuja occidentalis, so eastern white cedar that are very, very beautiful as well. The American larch, or the tamarack, or the hackmatack, a lot of different names for it. The eastern larch, the American larch. This is the southernmost part of their range, and in this southernmost part of the range they like to grow in really lowland, bog, and this really is a bog. If we pan to the left here, we'll see that it's very mushy, it's very wet in a lot of areas. There is naturally occurring sphagnum moss everywhere here. So these trees are covered in it. If you look just right over here and walk with me here, you'll see just mounds of beautiful, beautiful sphagnum moss. Fibrous moss that you actually pay money for online. And it's just growing in mounds around these trees, keeping them really, really healthy. We need to get started on collecting a couple of trees because we only have a couple hours up here. So let's see what we can find. Alright, so a little bit of a surprise here. You see this beautiful cut back looking conifer. And I thought, well, it's another hemlock. And you know what this is it looks like a Douglas fir. It's got some really gnarly deadwood here, and it's grown new tops, new apex up here. It is growing from the base of an old stump, so I think this one would be tough to take. Does it look awesome? Yes, it does. So we'll probably pass on this one. But it is really, really cool looking when we get in there. All right, moving on. This is a tamarack, quite large. Growing out of stumps. Look at that thing. Look at that. That's cool. We found ourselves a Thuja. All right, Thuja occidentalis, eastern white cedar, beautiful natural deadwood. Now you see why we create gin and deadwood on a tree. This is totally natural. This big branch is very healthy, so we're hoping that that sustains it. It came out of the ground really, really easy. I'll try and lift it up here so you can get a better look at it. Kind of a beautiful specimen. We'll try and keep this alive. Boy, that's heavy. It's going to be tough to get out of here, but we'll do our best. This is our final larch here. There's a really interesting move over to the right here, and then a straight apex to the left. I think we can do something cool with it. It came right out. It's in sphagnum moss already. And it's time to get these home, but you just look around here and everything looks ancient. It's an absolutely beautiful property. Alright, so hopefully that footage was interesting, guys. Definitely a fun trip. My back hurt for a couple of days, but really pumped with the trees that we were able to get out of that bog. This is obviously the Thuja occidentalis. The Thuja did great this year. All of the pads that we have that are actively growing have added a lot of volume this year. You see this giant bar that comes out to the left here. This foliage in tighter on the tree is probably what we'll be using. So I'm thinking about an apex, left, right, back to the left up here. This is a nice pad, and I do have an outside branch for a curve if I'm going to use that. So anyway, we'll clean up the trunk next spring. Some beautiful brown, almost juniper-like dead and live veins that we can illustrate and bring out. And then of course wiring that we'll do. I'll bring you that styling footage hopefully next spring. Alright, so great news on the Thuja doing well. Unfortunately, we can't say the same for the big American larch that we took out this spring. I showed the beautiful spring foliage that tree pushed out. Unfortunately, that growth withered and died. I think around August, I was accepting that tree had passed away, and I went ahead and cut it open to see how old it was. 29 rings, 29-year-old tree, only about 3.5 foot tall and 4 inches thick, so that shows you how slow those bog larch grow. They're ancient trees, and we need to be careful when we're taking them out. And we need to learn from each time that we do. So bummed to lose that one. You know, highlighting the growth pattern of that tree was the picture that I showed you of the shoots coming off of those branches. And each one of those little rings that you see here in the photo represent 1 year of growth. So it's just limping along in the bog. Compare that to this larch, which I've grown since it was about as thick as this chopstick as a seedling. In just 3 years, it's thickened up to 1 inch thickness on the trunk, partially in the ground for 2 of those seasons, and it pushes out just crazy amounts of growth. I pruned back to about the length of this red handle, And this secondary shoot that grew out as a result of that is about 8 inches long. So right there you see the contrast. This is kind of a Taj Mahal for this tree, plenty of water every day and coarse bonsai soil, versus the environment that that bog larch was in. And so we learned a lot from that experience. We also learned from Nick Lenz's book that we finally bought called Bonsai from the Wild. It's literally a Yamadori guide. He has specific chapters on Thuja accidentalis and bog larch collecting. Crazy specific, but super helpful. So we used those learnings to make another trip this fall, because a key takeaway from Nick's book was the fact that he actually recommends collecting in early fall for bog larch specifically versus spring for most deciduous trees. So we tried that out. We also applied a lot of other learnings from that book, and I'm going to discuss that at length in our second video. So I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to like and subscribe, because there's definitely more to come, literally, on collecting for our next video.